big story with the federal government on Thursday being knocked by Niger Republic military leader General Abdurrahmani Tishiani. What are the potential implications of General Tishiani's allegations on Nigeria's diplomatic relations with Niger Republic, and just basically how might this impact regional stability in West Africa?
Well, the relationship between both countries are already strained, especially with the advent of military coup roughly a year earlier, and efforts made by Nigeria and ECOWAS trying to restore, democratic rulership in the country. So the relationship is already strained, but that allegation coming, and of course, the federal government has responded, saying that it's just a figment of his imagination. But you see, beyond that, you see, what we have right here is something exceptionally complicated, because we are now talking of international diplomacy, and what you were seeing between both countries is normally the spillover of a lot of diplomatic, covert maneuvers, between both countries. So, accusing Nigeria, of trying to breed Lukarawa to destabilize its country, to destabilize Niger, sabotage infrastructure and agricultural infrastructure in the country in Niger is a little bit how do I put it? I think it's an over the bar kind of allegation, and I somehow feel that the Nigerian the Nigerian junta has been pushed to the wall, because you cannot expect to leave a geopolitical, that is the ECOWAS, without some consequences. Then especially aligning with one of the geopolitical giants in the world. We are talking of Russia. And don't forget that our alignment, of course, we say we are non-aligned, but most of our policies are tailored towards the West. So definitely you are going to have that strained relationship, and that is what you see spewing out. Now, on that Lukarawa thing, this is not to, as much as possible, I want to try to be a journalist, but at the same time, I must also remember that I'm a Nigerian. But as it is, that, on this platform, we did say that the announcement by the military on that Lukarawa thing, of his existence and things like that was a bit phony to me at that time, because I expected it to have been managed covertly. You understand? So, yeah, there could be a lot of things going on underground that we don't know about. You understand? But what it simply tells me is that we don't know who is pushing who. We don't know, because we did say that the Lukarawa, from what we have gathered, are people that are not Nigerian. They are not indigenous to Nigeria. They came from other countries into Nigeria to foment trouble. So, in a bit to push them back, Niger might feel that they are dislodging them into their country, and because of the breakdown in alliances, they can't do a joint military action. So it's like trading blames. So that is that is the preliminary, that on the surface, that is what is. There could be a lot still hidden, and by and large, it says a lot about African leaders. You see, it is quite a shame, really, on both leaders, on both the leadership of both countries. Regardless of the fact that you might want to align with some geopolitical giants, either in the West or the East, you have to remember that, first and foremost, we are Africans, we are brothers. The kind of relationship you have between Niger and Nigeria, especially the northern Nigeria, is very solid. It transcends that, all these artificial borders we are talking about. You are talking of the average Sokoto man having cousins in Niger. So those are some of the things that they should look at, before, they go on air and make this manner of accusations at each other,
All right. Well, is this going to, like, the public perception from these allegations and how federal government responded to it? Is it going to have any effect on how Nigerians see how these situations are unfolding?
Don't forget that at some point there was a very strong, allegation that Nigeria wanted to invade Niger, and of course the Senate stopped them. The Senate ruled against it. That you cannot unilaterally move against a neighbor. To a large extent, it shows that Tinubu is being cautious because he doesn't have a complete consensus on how to engage Niger. Like I said earlier, Niger has border with about 5 countries or so in the north, and not just artificial borders. We are talking of cultural links, biological links. there is hardly any core Hausa Fulani man in those 5 states that don't have a close relative, in Niger. We are talking of, and not only Niger, in this other in all these north, countries bordering Nigeria and the north. Take, for instance, you have the Lamido of Adamawa. The Lamido of Adamawa will tell you that his terrain stretches into Cameroon and even Chad. You understand? So the Lamido of Adamawa is the paramount ruler of territories within Cameroon. So you have that is the kind of relationship we are talking about. So when you now have a breakdown of diplomatic relationship, at that level, so the trickle down effect could be very, very devastating. So it's something that I think the federal government is trying to navigate. But I would have preferred the Nigerian president to be more circumspect about what he says, because maybe if it could have been better managed if some, like a surrogate, like an assistant or a media aide, says things like that. But coming from the head of the junta, it says a lot of things. It's like saying that the differences is irreversible and is irrevocable. And that it spells a very, very dire, situation for both countries, if you ask me.
Yeah, Nigeria is seen as the big brother of Africa, and looking at Niger, to say, we see that there is a huge difference. But of course, as a sovereign country, we must give them respect and all of these things. And then they are, surrounded by, we have close borders, sharing and all of this. Now with the infiltration of terrorist groups moving through the border, that is very, very porous. Is it not a living reality to the Nigerian government that terrorists use this route and go through this border, and then we need to synergize and see that there's a border protection in this situation? What can Nigeria, perceived to be the big brother of Africa, do to mediate?
There is no mediation happening. Each time the ECOWAS stretch its hands of fellowship, you see them rebuffing it. You see the Sahelian coalition rebuffing it. In fact, I think they said they are going to change they made their diplomatic passport. They are going to change the passports from your hands. So they keep on entrenching their position that they want to remain autonomous as a bloc. You understand? Now, you see, this is not to say that what they have done is wrong. Their terrain and what they face is peculiar to them. It is indigenous to them. There is no way I, living in Kwara, in Nigeria, can say what they are feeling, can feel what they feel. So if they feel that is the way to go, fine and good. But you see, my take is that sometimes, even when you want to realign and align, you must understand that long before the advent of all this modernity, colonialism and the rest of them, there was an Africa. There was the black race. There was the sub-Saharan, where we traded, where we had cultural affinities and things like where we shared things. So these are not things that you severe in 100 years. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. So the same way with fighting insurgency, terrorism. You see, terrorism is an asymmetric warfare. It's not the kind of conventional warfare that you have between Ukraine and that is demarcated by territories. No, it's a flux. It's in a state of flux. You don't even know exactly where. It's amorphous. Yes, let me not put it that way. You don't know where it's going to come from next. Your next door neighbor might be an agent of a terrorist organization. So how do you know? So, when we were talking about ISWAP, ISIS and the rest of them, people thought you are going to have Arabians, coming into Nigeria to detonate bombs and the rest of them, only for us to see suspects who are blacks like us. You see, that is to tell you how terrible terrorism is. So to fight that kind of a war, between two countries, there must be regional military alliance.
All right.
In a situation where you now have two, an opposing geopolitical giant with different view about military strategy and things like that, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. So what I think Nigeria tried to do was to dislodge the Lukarawa, push them, out of the Nigerian territory. Of course, where is it going to go if it's in Sokoto? It's going to go into Niger. So maybe that is what the man is responding to, that you cannot push them here. Since they don't have an alliance, they don't have any kind of alliance anymore. Then, of course, don't forget that what is equally irking the Nigerian is the presence of the French, the alleged presence of the French, military personnel in Nigeria. There was this allegation that, a base has been given to them, which Nigeria has continued to deny. There is a need for Niger to be afraid, because the French has been there with them since forever. So they understand the terrain.
Until they pushed back.
So there might be that fear that France moving over to Nigeria is to give Nigeria the kind of intelligence they need. You understand? And use it as a bait to sabotage their country. So that is what is playing out. That is what I think is playing out there. And here, I think regardless, whatever Nigeria decides to do as a countermeasure, it must remember that Niger is still a brother.
Exactly. And let's look at is it close call to Russia, Ukraine, and then the NATO forces and all of this? What Russia is trying to do to Ukraine?
No, I don't see that happening here, because you see, we don't share territories.
All right. Again, another question is if the bloc, the Sahel blocks, if they do eventually stay on their own, do you have fears that there might be low bilateral relationship between other ECOWAS members and those blocks?
Well, you see, I think to a very large extent, as long as you have France, still holding sway among members within the ECOWAS bloc, there will be a lot of hostility. Because, dislodging France from all those places where they have been for close to going to 100 years now, it's not going to go away overnight. No, it's not. It's not going to go away overnight. And, if there is anything we must say about these colonial masters, is that they don't let go easily. You understand? They don't let go. They've been there. Let me give you an instance. Do you know that for most of this West African ECOWAS bloc, their money, the francs,
the central bank,
their central bank is located in France.
Yeah, I'm very sure.
Do you know what that means? That they have to find a different currency and the rest of them, and they don't have that. Then of course you have access to their mineral resources, personnel, and things like that. How many of indigenous of that place have naturalized? In France now, they'll be looking at them with suspicion because they still have ties to their country. You understand? You have a lot of, look at the France national team, for instance. How many blacks do you have there? And they are mostly from this West African sub-region. So how many of them are going to, when they see that kind of hostility to their country of birth? So these are some of the things that are going to play out. You understand? So it's going to be a dire one. And we are looking at something far, far bigger than what is happening within the sub-Saharan. We are looking at something that is going to stretch right into the heart of Europe. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move away from that and into one of the local stories that we have. APC and PDP clash in Kwara over governor's budget presentation. The Kwara State chapter of the All Progressives Congress and the opposition People's Democratic Party on Thursday bickered over the 2025 budget presentation by Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak. What's your reaction to that?
What PDP is saying is that, raised issues about the figures that were presented, 50,000, and which the Ministry of Education later clarified. Number one, this is what I'm going to say. You see, putting the blame at the foot of the governor might not be fair to him. He can't be everywhere. And so he expected all these things, they would have done a proper thorough job of presenting him. So, so where I'm going to blame the governor is that by now I should see sanctions to officers who made that. And that is one thing that I think the governor has not been doing very well. That is, where there are failures, you met out sanction. Because you are not there. If I pay you salaries, you are paid to do a job. Do the job thoroughly. It entrenches the culture of, professionalism and integrity in the system. People have a reason to fear being lax in doing their job. You get my point? Now, then two, the second blame goes to the lawmakers. We have been saying it over and over again that I will want let them kukuma scrap, sorry to use that, scrap the state assemblies, so that we know the governor is fully in charge. Because I don't understand this idea of bringing such figures. In fact, that thing is supposed to have come from there. before we have them. So then they can even after the ministry said that, they should have, at least made a statement that, yes, we have summoned them to come and explain how the chief executive officer of the country can be so embarrassed publicly. You understand? So, yeah, let us give it to the opposition party, at least on that score. They made a very good point of pointing that out. Those are the things we talk about, checks and balances, and what's it called again? Pressure group. When you have a political, because the role of a political party, apart from vying for power, is to educate and enlighten the electorate. You understand? They have done a good job of doing that, and of course, the ministry have come out to make clarifications. But beyond that clarification, I actually expect there to be a probe, kind of, so that okay, we have seen this is where the mistake came from, and it will not repeat itself again. We have reorganized, we have done this, we have done that, we have introduced this new measure, we have introduced this new protocol. So when you see that, then governance is happening. So we don't just gloss over things like that, especially like I said, go into the new year, you are going to see more of this.
Let me ask you, and it's going to be, my question is going to be from the reaction of the APC state chairman, Prince Sunday Fagbemi, who took a swipe at the opposition, party, saying it can't return to power through propaganda. No. Do you see that as contradictory to what the situation is and what the ministry has said? And then, the state chairman is saying a different thing.
Yeah, exactly. What has that got to do with, what PDP has done is to play a statutory role as an opposition party. It has opposed, and opposed properly. You have admitted that there was a mistake in this. So, and they picked it up and used it to pick apart the governor. So, it's saying that it's not a question of coming back to power. It is not within its, it is beyond its ken to determine whether PDP will come back or not. That one is in the hands of the electorate. It is the people who vote that decide who will be in power. So, if you keep on messing up, then you are going to have an onotoge if you are not careful. So these are the kind of careless statements that made PDP an opposition in Kwara. So let him continue.
All right, away from that story, let's quickly touch on another interesting story. And this, we'll have to go to, the tax reform bill, and that's, the Bauchi State Governor, Bala Mohammed, saying that the North will show its true colors. And that's to do with President Tinubu's tax policies. And then he views it as anti-northern Nigeria. And that's threatened the region. And that the region will react. And again, that, that tax bill wants to favor a particular section of the country and then neglects the entire North. We've had this conversation, and it's a national conversation. And I don't think we'll get tired of talking about it until probably people have a better understanding of it. No, my question directly is, how do you weigh the statement from the Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed with the quote, the North will react and show its true colors?
Its true color. I really like to know what color that is. Is it black, blue, red, green, or what? Some of this, on the one hand, we are praising what PDP did here. On the other hand, you have a state. You see, what I expect Bala to tell me is how that bill is inimical to governance, to people of Bauchi State, instead of trying to whip up unnecessary sentiment. You understand? That they will show its true color when there you have other Northerners backing the bill. After all, what's the name of this man? Dogara. Dogara recently said, put a kind of endorsement on the bill that they are saying this, they are saying that Tinubu is speaking Yoruba people. Okay, for 40 years we've been having the power. What have we done with the power? He said it openly there. He's a northerner, or is he not?
Dogara.
Dogara, yeah, he said it. He said it. So you see, I think beyond just whipping up sentiment, I think we should go beyond that at this point. Because you see, the way I think they should look around the world. Look around the world, look at what is happening elsewhere. We cannot live in isolation. There are lots of efforts into trying to win themselves away from rent-based economy into a more organic form of economy where enterprise is promoted. And that is what the tax reform is meant to achieve. You understand? No, yes, there are gray areas. There are things to be worked out. You understand? Because if you ask me, that bill if passed into law, it's going to favor states that are already established as enterprise, enterprise, where you have a lot of enterprise like Lagos, for instance.
Wouldn't that can we see that as more like a challenge to other states that are not as enterprising as others?
Exactly, that should be a challenge, and this is where government, where the federal government, has to be like a father. You understand? Because over the years, you see, everything was spent in, that is, the whole Commonwealth of Nigeria was used to develop Lagos as a former national capital. You understand? So now you have Lagos State as the headquarters of the finance, the headquarters of even aviation. You have a headquarters, seafaring, businesses, blue economy. That is where you have the headquarters. So everything tends to move towards Lagos, from Lagos to the rest of the country. So definitely, in terms of taxation, it's going to have the lion's share. You understand? It's going to have the biggest share, definitely. So now, there is a way you can even out things, like some of those things that, states like Kano, for instance, have been saying, in terms of opening up the structure, railway line, and all those things, making it easier for movement of things, allowing for business to flow in other places. Like when you talk of, in the areas of industry, you talk of the south-south, southeast, corridor. You can open up that place because, like we said here, Calabar, if you have a road line straight to Maiduguri, it is far, far shorter than when you have to go through Lagos. So what is government going to do to that, so as to encourage enterprises in all those places? Then don't forget that, you see, I keep on making this argument. People think that the North is like a pariah it's like it's like a parasite to other countries. And I say no, because you see, when you talk of agriculture, which is a huge part of the economy, the GDP in Nigeria, it essentially happens more in the north. You have more bigger farms in the north. You have, even in livestock rearing, they have it. And when you look at the economy of agriculture, it is far, far, far more sustainable than what you have here. So you see, what is government going to do to make sure that this thing becomes far more enterprising? So
is that the responsibility of the federal government, or is it a collaborative effort between state and federal?
It is a collaborative, but you see, the way our federation is skewed puts an enormous power in the hands of the presidency. I'll give you one example, like the mining, for instance. You understand? The mining, anything that has to do with anything under the ground, anything above the ground is for the state, but anything under the ground is federal government. You understand? I expect that the federal government to loosen up a bit on that, especially with respect to about 33 minerals have been de-risked. All those things, you give it to states, like bitumen, for instance. Leave it for states to mine bitumen and do a lot of things. Though, of course, there are some international angles to it, because most of these mining conglomerates prefer securities, and only a federal entity can give that kind of security. That is why if a state comes in, they might be afraid to come in. So there is a little bit of more risk in it. So, like I said, like you rightly, observed, it's going to be a collaborative, but again, they shouldn't be like Bala Muhammad. They should be more creative and see how they can be more enterprising. Then you can then say, okay, meet me halfway. This is what we are willing to do. Not just say that you are going to show one color or the other.
Well, let me just ask you this or further. Do you see so many governors in northern Nigeria and away from northern Nigeria, and then across the country, across the federation, have a total understanding of the tax reform bills, then looking into the positive rather than whip up sentiments?
I think they understand it. I think they understand.
So what are their fears then?
Their fears is politics. Their fears is politics because it is all politics of 2027. It's negotiation. That is the way I see it. 2027 is coming. They will look for a negotiating tool with Tinubu. You understand? Okay, we can allow you to have the tax bill if you guarantee a blanket ticket for every single one. That is what they normally do.
Okay.
You understand? That's what they normally do. So at the end of the day.
Well, so the president made a joke. I'm sure you saw that joke at the National Assembly when he was while he was just concluding his statement. He said, "Well, you all just consider yourselves re-elected." Did you see the video?
Oh, I saw the video. Of course.
All right. So I think he said to us that. Let's really take a look at a bit different sport this morning. The Super Eagles Super B Eagles will play Ghana for
the Jollof Derby. Wow.
You say it's a Jollof Derby.
Yeah.
We did a Jollof Derby in Akwa Ibom tomorrow.
Okay.
And of course, there's been this attention on it. It was a goalless draw in Accra, Ghana. What are the chances? Again, this is there's a big rivalry between the Black Galaxies and then the Eagles. What are you seeing? What are your predictions, real quick? How prepared are we?
Well, the truth is, you see, okay, let's look at it on paper. You see, if you look at the local league, most of the players are coming from the local league.
Yes.
And within this season, you've seen a lot of improvement in our local league. The competitiveness is high. The away winnings, the draws, and the rest of them, I think it's something above par, compared to what we have been seeing. We've seen a lot of innovations, and we've seen a lot of beautiful football, that have been played. I'm a keen follower of the local league. So the kind of players, the kind of exposure that you are seeing has been fantastic. Now, it is one thing to have a very good league, and it's another thing to have good recruitment process where you bring the very best to come and compete. Because I know that a lot of politics are involved in picking players to play for Nigeria. A lot of things go in there, horse trading and the rest of them. Now, barring all those, Nigeria should have, and home advantage.
All right.
Nigeria should.
Because that's what we say. It's always very difficult to play at the Akpabio International Stadium in Uyo. All the very best to the Super Eagles.
All the very best.
And let's say, of course, so we can be in the competition next year. Thank you, Nicholas, for your contribution this morning. Views expressed by Nicholas is not in any way the position of Flow FM 92.7, but are solely expressed by him. My name is Adeyemi.
And I'm Danielle Shitta-Bey. Thank you for joining us.
We're back on Monday morning. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Everybody suppose chop early momo wakis. My brother suppose get all the